Most people walk into public spaces believing they are simply being seen, observed, noticed. That assumption is the first mistake that kills respect. Because in reality, you are not being watched, you are being tested. Public environments are not neutral. Offices, social gatherings, meetings, online forums, even casual conversations in front of others operate as silent evaluation chambers. People are not asking, "Who are you?" They are unconsciously asking, "How do you behave when pressure is subtle?" And the answer is judged instantly, without discussion, without feedback, and without mercy. This is exactly what the title points to. You are being tested in public, and most people fail without realizing a test even occurred. The danger isn't obvious humiliation or confrontation. Those are rare. High-status environments don't expose weakness loudly, they measure it quietly. A raised eyebrow, a delayed reply, a joke made at your expense, an interruption that goes unchallenged. These moments aren't random, they are probes, and what matters is not what you say, but what you leak. The first truth you must understand is this: respect is rarely taken. It is usually withdrawn. And it is withdrawn after a series of small, silent mistakes, mistakes that feel harmless in the moment, but accumulate into a reputation downgrade. Public tests exist because open conflict is inefficient. Groups prefer silent sorting. When someone exposes insecurity, reactivity, or neediness in public, others don't argue with them. They simply adjust how much respect they offer. Invitations change, tone shifts, influence narrows, and the person being tested often never understands why. This is why the phrase "tested in public" matters so much. Tests only work when the subject doesn't know they are happening. If someone openly challenges you, that's not a test, that's a confrontation. Tests are designed to look like nothing. And the people who fail them usually think they're just being themselves. But public respect doesn't care about authenticity. It cares about containment. Every public setting has an invisible hierarchy, even among equals, even among friends. And that hierarchy is maintained through micro-behaviors. How fast you respond, how much you explain, how you handle discomfort, how you deal with silence, how you react when attention shifts away from you. These are not personality traits. They are signals, and signals are interpreted ruthlessly. This is where most people misunderstand the situation. They believe respect is earned through competence, intelligence, or effort. Those things matter, but only after you pass the behavioral filters. Before people listen to what you say, they assess how you handle pressure in front of others. And public pressure is never announced. It appears as ambiguity, as mild disrespect, as moments where you feel slightly off balance and compelled to correct, explain, defend, or smooth things over. That compulsion is the test, and acting on it is usually the mistake. This documentary exists to expose those mistakes, because the 7 silent mistakes that kill respect don't look like failures. They look like normal reactions, reasonable responses, socially acceptable behaviors. But in public testing environments, normal is often read as low leverage. The reason these mistakes are silent is because no one points them out. No one tells you that you over-explained. No one announces that your quick reaction lowered your status. No one warns you that your attempt to be liked cost you authority. They simply update their internal model of who you are. And once that model shifts, it rarely shifts back. This is why understanding public tests is not about learning tricks or tactics. It's about recognizing the environment you're already in. You don't need to win tests. You need to stop failing them unconsciously. As we move forward, every section of this documentary will examine one specific mistake people make during these public tests. Not in theory, but in real, observable behavior. Each mistake will show how respect erodes quietly, how status is downgraded without conflict, and why most people never realize what cost them influence. Remember this as we continue. If a behavior only harms you when others are present, it is almost always a public test failure. And once you see that clearly, you stop mistaking observation for evaluation. and start understanding why respect is never lost loudly, only silently. To understand why you are being tested in public, you must first understand why those tests are almost never verbal. Words are inefficient. High-status environments do not debate, argue, or explain hierarchy. They sense it, and sensing requires far less energy than confrontation. This is why public respect is not decided through what people say about you, but through what they feel when you act. This is the foundation beneath every silent mistake that kills respect. When people are together in a group, their brains shift into evaluation mode automatically, not consciously, instinctively. They begin tracking who is calm, who is reactive, who seeks approval, who resists pressure, who collapses under ambiguity. None of this requires dialogue. It happens below awareness, and that is exactly why it is so powerful. Public respect is decided without words because words invite challenge. Silence does not. If someone openly states, "I don't respect him," they risk backlash, justification, or escalation. But if they simply adjust their behavior, speak less seriously to you, exclude you from decisions, interrupt you more often, the hierarchy corrects itself without friction. The system remains stable. This is why tests are subtle. A system that announces its filters would be easy to game. So instead, it watches how you behave when you don't think you're being judged. This is exactly how silent mistakes work. Consider this. When someone interrupts you in public, they are not primarily interested in what you were saying. They are watching what happens next. Do you rush to reclaim the floor? Do you explain yourself? Do you laugh it off too quickly? Do you stiffen? Do you overcorrect? Each response broadcasts information. And because these moments are small, people feel safe evaluating them. No one feels cruel for noticing. No one feels aggressive for adjusting their respect. It feels natural, automatic, almost invisible. That invisibility is the trap. Most people believe respect is lost through dramatic failures, public embarrassment, obvious incompetence, open conflict. But in reality, those moments are rare and often forgiven. What is not forgiven are patterns, and patterns are built from tiny behaviors repeated under observation. This is why public respect is decided without words, because words are not needed to see patterns. The human brain is exceptionally good at detecting consistency. When someone consistently fills silence, consistently defends themselves, consistently reacts quickly, consistently seeks validation, the group doesn't need to discuss it. The conclusion forms on its own, and once that conclusion forms, respect drains quietly. This is also why people are often confused when their influence fades. They replay conversations, looking for the wrong thing they said. But the problem was never a sentence. It was a response pattern. Public tests are designed to expose patterns, not opinions. This connects directly to the title. You are being tested in public, not interrogated. There is no question to answer correctly. There is only pressure to manage or fail to manage. Another reason respect is decided silently is emotional economy. Groups prefer emotional efficiency. If someone requires constant reassurance, clarification, or emotional management, they become costly, not morally, energetically. And in public, cost is visible. This is why over-explanation is punished, not because it is wrong, but because it signals dependence on understanding. And dependence lowers perceived autonomy. Autonomy is the currency of respect. People who hold respect do not need to be understood immediately. They tolerate misinterpretation. They let silence exist. They do not rush to stabilize every moment. This creates a psychological asymmetry. Others adjust to them, not the other way around. And that asymmetry is noticed without comment. Public tests, then, are not about dominance in the aggressive sense. They are about self-containment. Can you hold your internal state steady when attention shifts? When ambiguity appears? When someone else subtly applies pressure? If you can, respect stabilizes. If you cannot, respect erodes. No announcement is made. This is why loud defenses rarely work. By the time someone feels the need to verbally defend their reputation, the test has already concluded. The audience has already updated its internal ranking. Words at that point don't restore respect, they confirm its loss. Understanding this changes how you see public life entirely. You stop asking, "What should I say?" and start asking, "What am I signaling by how I'm reacting?" That shift alone prevents several of the 7 silent mistakes we will examine later. Because once you understand that public respect is decided without words, you stop trying to talk your way out of tests that were never verbal to begin with. As we move forward, remember this principle: if a behavior feels necessary only because others are watching, it is probably a response to a test. And if it feels emotionally relieving but socially costly, it is likely one of the silent mistakes that kills respect. If public tests were obvious, most people would pass them. But they are not designed to be obvious. They are designed to feel ordinary, and that ordinariness is precisely why they work. When you are being tested in public, nothing dramatic happens. No one raises their voice. No one accuses you of anything. There is no clear right answer. Instead, something slightly uncomfortable appears, a moment that invites a reaction. That invitation is the test. Most people fail because they misidentify the situation. They think the moment is about politeness, clarity, humor, or efficiency. They do not realize it is about behavior under observation. And because they misread the context, they respond in ways that quietly downgrade their respect. Public tests usually appear in 5 common forms. The first is interruption. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence in a meeting or group discussion. This is not primarily about impatience. It is a pressure probe. The group watches to see whether you rush to reclaim attention, raise your voice, over-explain your point, or collapse into silence. None of those responses are neutral. Each one signals something about your internal control. What matters is not whether you were interrupted, but how quickly you feel compelled to fix it. The second form is delayed response. Your message goes unanswered longer than expected. Your contribution receives no immediate acknowledgement. In public or semi-public settings, this delay is rarely accidental. It introduces ambiguity, and ambiguity reveals impatience, insecurity, or entitlement very quickly. People who are being tested often fail here by chasing closure, sending follow-ups, explaining context, or signaling frustration. Again, nothing is said out loud, but respect is quietly adjusted. The third form is casual disrespect disguised as humor, a joke at your expense. A light comment that slightly reframes you as less serious, less competent, or less central. These moments feel socially minor, which is why they are powerful. If you react emotionally, you look fragile. If you overcompensate with humor, you look eager. If you defend yourself, you validate the frame. The test is not the joke. The test is whether you need to repair the moment. The fourth form is exclusion. You are left out of a decision, a conversation, or a follow-up, often unintentionally on the surface. But exclusion is one of the clearest public tests because it reveals how you handle loss of position. Do you demand explanation? Do you signal resentment? Do you try to reinsert yourself too forcefully? Exclusion tests whether your sense of worth is internally stable or externally dependent. The fifth form is forced visibility. You're put on the spot unexpectedly, asked to explain, justify, or react publicly without preparation. The pressure here is not intellectual, it is emotional. People are watching for composure, not brilliance. Most people think the test is about having the right answer. It isn't. It's about how you manage uncertainty without leaking anxiety. These 5 forms share one feature. They are all plausibly deniable. If you were to call them out, you would look paranoid or dramatic. That is intentional. Public tests must remain socially invisible to function. This is why most people miss them while they are happening. They are busy being polite, being helpful, being agreeable, being fast, being liked. And those instincts, while socially rewarded in private interactions, often become liabilities in public testing environments. This is where the 7 silent mistakes begin to form. Each mistake is a natural reaction to these tests: over-explaining after interruption, defending after a joke, filling silence after delay, seeking reassurance after exclusion. None of these actions feel dangerous. In fact, they feel responsible. But in public, responsibility is often misread as low status. The people who pass public tests do not do so by dominating the situation. They pass by not leaking information. They allow ambiguity to exist. They do not rush to correct every perceived imbalance. And because they don't react urgently, the pressure shifts away from them. This is the core mechanism behind public testing. Pressure reveals dependency. If someone can create mild discomfort and watch you scramble to relieve it, they learn something important about your position in the hierarchy. If they create discomfort and nothing happens, the pressure rebounds, and no one needs to explain any of this. By the time a test becomes obvious, it is no longer useful. The system has already learned what it needs to know. As we move into the next section, we will examine the first of the 7 silent mistakes, a mistake so common that most people believe it is a virtue. And yet, in public tests, it is one of the fastest ways to lose respect without realizing it ever happened. Because once you understand what a public test actually looks like, the only question that remains is this: when the pressure appears, do you reveal yourself, or do you remain contained? The first silent mistake that kills respect during public tests is one of the most socially praised behaviors: explaining yourself. In private, explanation feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels cooperative. But in public testing environments, explanation often signals something very different: dependence on approval. This is why this mistake is so dangerous. It doesn't look like weakness. It looks like clarity. When you are being tested in public, the situation is rarely about missing information. It is about pressure. And pressure exists to see whether you can tolerate misunderstanding without rushing to correct it. When someone makes a comment that slightly misrepresents you, when your idea is questioned vaguely, when your decision is met with silence or skepticism, the impulse to explain rises immediately. Most people feel that if they can just add context, justify their intent, or clarify their reasoning, the tension will dissolve. That impulse is exactly what the test is measuring. Public explanation often reads as an attempt to restore comfort, not the group's comfort, your own. And the moment the group senses that you need to be understood right now, your position subtly drops. This is how respect erodes without confrontation. High-respect individuals are often misunderstood in public. Not because they are unclear, but because they do not treat misunderstanding as an emergency. They allow others to sit with incomplete information. They do not rush to close every interpretive gap. This restraint communicates something powerful: internal stability. In contrast, over-explanation communicates urgency. It says, "I need you to see me correctly immediately." And in public tests, urgency is interpreted as pressure sensitivity. Consider how this mistake usually unfolds. Someone questions a decision you made, but not aggressively. Maybe it's a raised eyebrow, a casual "are you sure?" a neutral "why did you do it that way?" The question is open-ended, non-accusatory, and because it's mild, it feels safe to answer fully. So you add context, you justify constraints, you preempt objections. You explain not just what you did, but why it makes sense. And while you believe you are being thorough, the audience is absorbing something else. You feel accountable to their judgment. The mistake is not answering. The mistake is over-answering. Public tests are not passed by being airtight. They are passed by being unbothered. This is why elites rarely explain themselves in public unless necessary. Not because they lack reasons, but because reasons invite evaluation. And evaluation shifts power away from the actor and toward the audience. Once you explain, you implicitly accept the frame that your action requires validation. That frame is very difficult to reverse. This is also why explanation tends to expand under pressure. The more you sense doubt, the more you talk. And the more you talk, the more data you provide for others to assess you, not your idea, but your emotional relationship to it. By the end, the original point is forgotten. What remains is the impression that you were defending something fragile. This is how explaining yourself when no one asked becomes a silent respect killer. No one will tell you that you talked too much. No one will argue with your reasoning. They will simply treat you as someone who needs to justify their presence. And this adjustment happens quietly. This mistake is especially common among competent people. Those who are used to being evaluated on logic and correctness often assume that better explanations equal better outcomes. But public respect does not operate on correctness. It operates on containment. Contained individuals answer proportionally. They do not match ambiguity with volume. They do not confuse curiosity with challenge. And when explanation is optional, they choose restraint. This does not mean refusing to speak. It means recognizing when the test is not about information, but about composure. As we continue, keep this in mind. If you feel relief after explaining yourself, but notice the room feels subtly colder afterward, you likely passed information and failed the test. The second silent mistake that kills respect during public tests is often mistaken for confidence. Correcting people publicly. On the surface, correction looks strong. It looks precise. It looks like intellectual authority. But in public testing environments, correction frequently signals something far less powerful: emotional investment in being right. And being invested in being right is not the same as being respected. Public correction shifts the frame of the interaction. The moment you correct someone in front of others, the exchange stops being about accuracy and becomes about status negotiation. And that negotiation rarely favors the person who initiates it. This is why this mistake is so common among intelligent, capable individuals. They assume correctness earns respect. In private settings, that may be true. In public, correctness can feel like a challenge, not to the idea, but to the person. And people defend themselves reflexively when their status feels threatened. Consider how this usually happens. Someone slightly misstates a fact related to your work, or summarizes your position incorrectly, or attributes something to you that isn't quite accurate. The error is minor, but because it is public, it feels dangerous to leave uncorrected. So you step in, you clarify, you reframe. You point out the inaccuracy, politely of course, calmly, reasonably, but the audience does not only hear your words, they see the shift in posture, the tightening of focus, the subtle urgency to set the record straight. What they register is not precision. It is defensiveness dressed as competence. Public correction forces others into a response. Either they must accept the correction and lose face, or they must resist it and escalate. Neither outcome increases your respect. Even if you are correct, the social cost remains. This is why high-respect individuals are selective about when they correct publicly. They understand that not every inaccuracy threatens their position. In fact, many inaccuracies reveal more about the speaker than the subject. Letting a small error pass does not weaken authority. It often strengthens it. The silent mistake here is assuming that leaving something uncorrected equals agreement or weakness. In public tests, restraint is often interpreted as confidence in your standing. Correcting someone publicly also communicates hierarchy prematurely. It implies that you see yourself as the evaluator. If the group has not granted you that role, the correction feels presumptuous. And when hierarchy is asserted rather than acknowledged, it invites resistance. Again, no one says this out loud. They simply adjust how they treat you afterward. Slightly less deference, slightly more interruption, slightly less inclusion. The respect loss is incremental, not explosive. This mistake becomes especially costly when correction is framed as helpful. The more benevolent the tone, the more it highlights the power move. People are exceptionally sensitive to being corrected in front of others, even when it is done kindly. Public tests exploit this sensitivity. When someone makes a small error in front of a group, the test is not whether you catch it. The test is whether you can tolerate imperfection without asserting dominance. Those who rush to correct often reveal an internal need to control perception, and control-seeking reads as insecurity under scrutiny. This does not mean accuracy is unimportant. It means timing and setting matter more than truth in public status dynamics. High-respect figures often correct privately or later or not at all because their authority is not contingent on being seen as right in every moment. As with the first mistake, the cost is not immediate confrontation. It is quiet repositioning. If you notice that after correcting someone publicly, the room becomes subtly guarded, less open, or slightly colder toward you, that is the test's result. The correction succeeded intellectually, it failed socially. The third silent mistake that kills respect during public tests happens in a matter of seconds, reacting immediately. Speed feels powerful. Quick responses feel confident. Decisive reactions are often praised. But in public testing environments, speed is rarely interpreted as strength. More often, it signals that pressure has landed. When you react instantly, you reveal something critical, that the stimulus controlled your timing. Public tests are designed to observe this exact moment, the gap between what happens and how quickly you move to resolve it. That gap reveals your internal leverage. Most people believe the test is about what they say or do next. In reality, the test is whether they can tolerate not acting immediately. Consider how this mistake appears. A comment challenges you lightly. A joke reframes you. A question puts you on the spot. An unexpected criticism surfaces. Before you've consciously decided anything, you respond. You explain, you joke back, you counter, you adjust your tone. And in doing so, you collapse the space where power lives. Power in public is not created by action. It is created by timing. Those who hold respect do not rush to stabilize moments. They allow uncertainty to hang long enough for others to feel it. This does not mean silence forever. It means proportion. Immediate reaction communicates that the moment demanded resolution and that you felt compelled to provide it. That compulsion is the signal. Public tests exploit emotional reflexes. They introduce mild pressure and watch for automatic movement. Those who move instantly reveal that their behavior is externally driven. Those who pause communicate autonomy, and autonomy is the core of respect. This is why people who remain calm under surprise are consistently ranked higher, not because they are smarter, but because they do not leak urgency. Urgency is contagious, but not in a positive way. When you react immediately, you pull others into the emotional gravity of the moment. The group senses that something needed fixing, and when you are the one fixing it, you are subtly positioned as the one who was affected by it. This is how reacting quickly becomes a respect liability. The mistake is especially common among capable people. Those who are used to problem-solving often treat social moments like tasks to complete. A tension appears, resolve it. A misunderstanding emerges, clarify it. A challenge arises, respond to it. But public tests are not problems, they are measurements. The more efficiently you react, the more data you provide. High-respect individuals often appear slower, not because they are hesitant, but because they do not treat every stimulus as actionable. They let others speak, they let moments settle, they allow pressure to redistribute, and something interesting happens in that pause. The burden shifts. The person who initiated the test begins to feel exposed. The joke loses momentum. The challenge softens. The room recalibrates. All without a word being spoken. This is why holding your frame matters more than defending it. Frame is not maintained by force. It is maintained by not being moved. When you react immediately, you allow others to dictate the tempo of the interaction. When you pause, you reclaim it. No one will say, "He reacted too fast." No one will point out the timing. They will simply feel that you were easy to move, and ease of movement lowers respect. As with the previous mistakes, the consequence is subtle. Slightly less deference, slightly more testing, slightly more casual treatment. And over time, a reputation forms. responsive, capable, but reactive. The fourth silent mistake that kills respect during public tests is one of the most misunderstood: trying to be liked. On the surface, likability feels like social intelligence. Being warm, agreeable, and accommodating is often rewarded in private interactions. But in public testing environments, likability and respect are not the same currency. And when pressure appears, choosing likability often costs authority. Public tests are not designed to assess friendliness. They are designed to assess self-positioning under observation. When someone introduces mild tension, a joke, a challenge, a dismissal, the group watches to see whether you prioritize internal stability or external approval. Trying to be liked answers that question immediately. This mistake often appears as humor. You laugh at something that subtly undermines you. You add a self-deprecating comment to smooth the moment. You agree too quickly to avoid friction. You soften your stance so no one feels uncomfortable. Each of these actions seems socially smooth, but collectively, they signal something dangerous. You are managing the room, not holding your position. In public, respect flows toward those who do not need to be liked in the moment. This does not mean being cold or hostile. It means not sacrificing your frame to maintain comfort. When someone prioritizes likability during a test, they often do so unconsciously. They feel the tension and instinctively move to relieve it. Relief-seeking is the tell. Public tests rely on the fact that most people are uncomfortable with social friction. The urge to smooth things over is deeply ingrained, but smoothing is also a form of yielding, and yielding, when unprompted, is interpreted as low leverage. This is why self-deprecating humor is so risky in public tests. In the right context, it can signal confidence. But under testing pressure, it often reads as preemptive surrender. You are reframing yourself downward before anyone else has to. And once you lower yourself publicly, others rarely lift you back up. Another form of this mistake is over-agreement. Someone challenges an idea lightly, and instead of holding your ground, you immediately concede. You signal flexibility, openness, collaboration. But what the group often sees is avoidance. Avoidance of tension reads as avoidance of responsibility. Public respect is not built on harmony. It is built on predictability under pressure. People trust those who remain consistent even when approval is uncertain. This is why highly respected figures are not universally liked in the moment. They are tolerated, observed, sometimes resented, but they are not dismissed. Trying to be liked during a test shifts your role. You stop being evaluated as a stable reference point and start being seen as a social adapter. Adapters are useful, but rarely deferred to. The most damaging aspect of this mistake is that it feels successful in the short term. The laughter returns, the tension drops, the conversation moves on, and you feel relieved. But relief is not respect. The room may feel lighter, but your position has shifted downward. And because the interaction ended smoothly, you are unlikely to question it. The respect loss goes unnoticed until patterns emerge. People interrupt you more, challenge you casually, or overlook your input. This is how trying to be liked quietly kills respect. Not through rejection, through accommodation. As with the previous mistakes, no one will confront you about it. No one will say, "You tried too hard to be agreeable." They will simply recalibrate how seriously they take you. The fifth silent mistake that kills respect during public tests occurs in the absence of words, filling silence. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. In public, that discomfort intensifies. When a pause stretches longer than expected, something inside urges action to speak, clarify, joke, explain, or move things forward. That urge is exactly what the test is measuring. Silence in public is not empty, it is diagnostic. It reveals who can tolerate uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. And tolerance of uncertainty is one of the strongest signals of internal stability. When you fill silence, you signal the opposite. This mistake often follows another. You explain yourself, you correct someone, you react quickly. And then the room goes quiet. The air feels heavy. And instead of letting that weight exist, you move to lift it. You add more context. You soften the point. You make a joke. You backtrack slightly. Not because it's necessary, but because the silence feels unbearable. But in public testing environments, silence is where respect is decided. High-respect individuals do not fear silence. They understand that silence redistributes pressure. When no one speaks, the burden shifts away from the last person who spoke, unless that person moves to fill it. The moment you fill silence, you reclaim the burden. This is why silence is so effective in public tests. It invites people to expose themselves. Those who speak first reveal their relationship to discomfort. Filling silence often communicates one of three things: anxiety, eagerness, or insecurity. None of these interpretations favor respect. Even when what you say is reasonable, the timing undermines it. The content becomes secondary to the signal. You could not sit with the pause. This is why powerful figures often let silence stretch longer than feels polite. They are not being manipulative. They are simply not rushing to manage other people's emotions. Public respect is built by those who do not feel responsible for the room's comfort. Another way this mistake appears is after a mild challenge. Someone questions you. You respond briefly. Then silence. And instead of allowing your response to stand, you add more qualifiers, justifications, clarifications. Each addition dilutes the original statement. What began as a firm position becomes negotiable, and negotiation without pressure signals low leverage. Silence tests whether you trust your own words. Those who do not trust their words feel compelled to reinforce them. Those who do trust them allow silence to validate them. This is why filling silence often follows a loss of confidence mid-interaction. The speaker senses that their position might not be fully accepted, and they attempt to repair it preemptively. But repair is only necessary when damage is acknowledged. By filling silence, you imply that something was wrong, and the group takes note. The most subtle form of this mistake is conversational over-participation, speaking when there is nothing to add, commenting to avoid absence, keeping the flow going even when the moment calls for stillness. In public tests, presence is not measured by volume. It is measured by weight. And weight is felt most strongly when words are restrained. Silence creates contrast. Those who speak sparingly are heard more clearly. Those who fill every gap blend into the noise. This is why filling silence reduces respect without anyone pointing it out. The person becomes less distinct, less grounded, less anchored. As with the other mistakes, the consequence is not rejection, it is soft erosion. People stop waiting for your words. They stop orienting toward you. They stop feeling your presence when you are quiet because you are never quiet. The seventh silent mistake that kills respect during public tests is the most subtle of all, and often the most damaging: not realizing the test has already ended. Most people assume that public tests are confined to the moment of pressure itself. The interruption, the joke, the challenge, the silence. They believe that once the exchange moves on, the risk has passed. In reality, the test often ends before you think it does, and what happens afterward determines how respect settles. Public tests are short. Their consequences are long. Once a moment of pressure appears, the group observes your initial response. That response is usually enough to form a preliminary judgment. After that, attention shifts. The test is complete, but many people continue reacting as if it is still happening, and that continuation is the mistake. This often looks like post-event compensation. You revisit the moment later in the conversation. You bring it up again. You clarify one more thing. You add context after the fact. You subtly reference the situation to rebalance perception. None of this is aggressive. It feels thoughtful, responsible, necessary. But to the group, it signals something else. The moment is still living inside you. High-respect individuals move on cleanly. Once a moment passes, it is over. They do not circle it. They do not harvest reassurance. They do not attempt delayed repair in public. Lingering communicates attachment, and attachment to a test outcome reveals that it mattered too much. Another form of this mistake is behavioral overcorrection. After feeling slightly diminished in a public interaction, someone changes how they act. They become louder, more assertive, more agreeable, more visible, less visible. Any noticeable shift is a signal. The group notices inconsistency immediately. When your behavior changes in response to a test, it suggests that the test altered your internal state. And when your internal state is visibly alterable, your position becomes negotiable. This is why composure after a test matters more than composure during it. Anyone can hold it together for a few seconds. Few people can return to baseline naturally. Returning to baseline signals resilience. It tells the group that nothing meaningful happened. And if nothing meaningful happened, respect stabilizes. The most damaging version of this mistake is rumination made public. You reference the moment indirectly. You make a joke about it later. You ask someone privately, but within the same environment, how it came across. Even subtle reassurance seeking extends the life of the test. The irony is that by the time you begin compensating, no one else is thinking about the original moment anymore. But they are noticing your continued orientation around it. This is how respect collapses quietly, not in the heat of pressure, but in the aftermath. Public tests are snapshots. They capture a single behavioral response and file it away. When you keep reacting after the snapshot is taken, you provide additional data, and it is almost never flattering. High-respect figures understand this intuitively. They treat public moments as transient. They do not archive them emotionally. They do not build identity around them. They do not seek closure from the audience. They let time do its work. Time neutralizes ambiguity. Time restores balance. Time allows patterns to reassert themselves, but only if you do not interfere. This is why the final silent mistake is not about action, but about non-release. Failing to let the moment die keeps it alive, and moments that stay alive continue to cost you. As we move forward into the final phase of this documentary, the focus shifts from mistakes to protection. Once you understand how public tests work and how respect is lost quietly, the most important skill becomes recognition. Not control, not strategy, recognition. Because the moment you can see a test clearly, you stop feeding it, and that alone is enough to protect your position. By the time respect is lost, the test that caused it is already over. This is why recognition matters more than response. Public tests do not announce themselves. They arrive disguised as ordinary interactions, casual comments, neutral questions, awkward pauses. And because they feel normal, most people respond automatically. They act before they identify what is happening. Recognition interrupts that automation. To recognize a public test, you must stop asking, "What should I say?" and start asking, "Why does this moment feel slightly pressurized?" That feeling, subtle tension, mild urgency, a pull to react, is the signature of a test. Public tests share three consistent signals. The first is ambiguity. The situation is unclear, but not hostile. Someone's intent is uncertain. A comment could be harmless or pointed. A pause could be nothing or something. Ambiguity is intentional. It forces you to reveal how you handle uncertainty in front of others. If a moment feels unclear but emotionally activating, assume you are being tested. The second signal is visibility. Tests happen when others are present, physically or socially. A private misunderstanding is rarely a test. A public one often is. The presence of witnesses changes the function of the interaction. It becomes evaluative rather than informational. If the same moment would not matter privately, but feels significant publicly, you are likely inside a test. The third signal is internal pressure to resolve. You feel an urge to explain, correct, react, joke, smooth things over, or defend yourself. The urge feels helpful, responsible, necessary, but urgency itself is diagnostic. Public tests create urgency precisely because urgency reveals dependence. Once you understand these signals, recognition becomes faster. You stop mistaking emotional activation for obligation. You realize that not every moment requires action. Recognition alone neutralizes many of the 7 silent mistakes. You explain less because you see that explanation is optional. You correct less because accuracy is not at stake. You react slower because timing matters. You seek less approval because the test is not about harmony. You tolerate silence because silence is doing the work. You defend less because reputation is not decided in moments. You move on cleanly because the test has already ended. This is not strategy. It is perception. The people who consistently pass public tests are not constantly calculating responses. They simply recognize when a moment is evaluative and refuse to over-participate in it. Another key aspect of recognition is understanding who benefits from your reaction. Public tests often advantage the person who introduces pressure. If your response relieves their uncertainty, validates their frame, or recenters attention on you defensively, the test has succeeded. Recognition asks a different question. If I do nothing extra here, who feels the pressure? Often, the answer is not you. This is why recognition shifts power without effort. When you stop feeding the moment loses momentum. The pressure dissipates. The test collapses. It is important to understand that recognition does not mean disengagement from life. It means disengagement from unnecessary exposure. You still speak, you still act, but you do so from choice, not compulsion. Public tests punish compulsion. One of the most reliable indicators that you have successfully recognized a test is emotional neutrality afterward. If you do not replay the moment, justify yourself internally, or feel the need to repair anything, recognition likely occurred in real time. If the moment lingers, recognition probably came too late. This is why awareness must be practiced before stakes rise. The more familiar you become with the structure of public tests, the less personal they feel. And the less personal they feel, the less power they have. Recognition does not make you dominant. It makes you unavailable to manipulation. And unavailability is one of the strongest foundations of respect. People who consistently retain respect in public are rarely the loudest, the fastest, or the most impressive in the room. What separates them is not charisma or intelligence, but predictability under pressure. They behave the same way when observed as they do when unobserved. This consistency is what makes public tests ineffective against them. Respect-protected individuals do not prepare for tests. They do not anticipate challenges. They do not rehearse responses. They simply do not change their internal state when mild pressure appears. And because nothing shifts internally, nothing leaks externally. The first difference is emotional containment. When a moment becomes ambiguous or uncomfortable, they do not rush to manage it. They allow tension to exist without interpreting it as a problem. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional non-attachment. They do not need the room to feel good in order to function well. This alone prevents several of the silent mistakes. They do not explain unnecessarily because they are not seeking relief. They do not correct reflexively because they are not threatened by imperfection. They do not react immediately because they are not controlled by stimulus. Containment communicates stability, and stability invites deference. The second difference is selective engagement. Respect-protected people do not respond to every stimulus. They are not dismissive, but they are discerning. If a comment does not require action, they let it pass. If a moment does not deserve emphasis, they do not amplify it. This selectivity makes their engagement feel weighted. When they do speak, it carries more significance, not because it is louder, but because it is rarer. In public tests, restraint reads as confidence. The third difference is indifference to immediate validation. They do not seek to be liked in the moment. They do not smooth every interaction. They do not trade their position for comfort. This does not make them cold, it makes them grounded. People sense that approval is optional for them. And when approval is optional, respect becomes automatic. The fourth difference is clean exits. Once a moment passes, they move on. They do not revisit it. They do not reference it later. They do not adjust their behavior in response to it. The interaction ends cleanly, emotionally, and behaviorally. This signals resilience. It tells the group that nothing significant occurred. Most respect loss happens not during the test, but in the aftermath. Respect-protected individuals avoid this entirely by returning to baseline immediately. The fifth difference is pattern trust. They trust that their long-term behavior speaks louder than any single moment. Because of this trust, they do not feel compelled to defend themselves or clarify everything in real time. They understand that reputation is cumulative, not fragile. This trust changes how they move through public spaces. They are not guarding an image. They are expressing a stable identity. And stability is difficult to test. It is important to understand that these differences are not tactics. They are outcomes of a certain relationship with pressure. Respect-protected people do not resist tests. Tests simply do not extract information from them. The group learns very little about them during moments of ambiguity, and that is precisely why their respect remains intact. They are not unreadable. They are unprovocable. As we approach the conclusion, one truth becomes clear. Public tests only work on those who feel the need to respond. When response becomes optional, tests lose their power. Respect is not taken from you in dramatic moments. It is not stripped away through confrontation, humiliation, or obvious failure. It leaves quietly. This documentary began with a simple but uncomfortable truth. You are being tested in public, often without realizing it. And as we've seen, those tests are not designed to expose intelligence, morality, or competence. They are designed to observe behavior under mild pressure. The 7 silent mistakes that kill respect all share one feature. They are understandable reactions, explaining yourself, correcting others, reacting quickly, trying to be liked, filling silence, defending your reputation, lingering after the moment has passed. None of these actions are wrong in isolation, but in public testing environments, they all reveal the same thing: internal movement. Public respect is granted to those who do not move internally when the external environment shifts. This is the principle that ties everything together. When someone interrupts you and you rush to reclaim the floor, something inside you moved. When someone jokes at your expense and you smooth it over, something inside you moved. When silence appears and you fill it, something inside you moved. When a comment stings and you defend yourself, something inside you moved. The group feels that movement, even if it cannot name it. And movement under pressure is interpreted as adjustability. Adjustable people are useful, they are responsive, they are agreeable, they are efficient, but they are rarely deferred to. Respect flows toward those who remain anchored. Anchoring does not require dominance. It does not require silence. It does not require aloofness. It requires non-urgency. The absence of urgency is what signals control. This is why respect is gained the same way it is lost: quietly. No announcements, no gestures, no declarations, just consistent, contained behavior across time. You do not need to pass public tests. You need to stop feeding them. The moment you recognize a test, the pressure dissolves. Because tests only extract information when you respond reflexively. When response becomes optional, the system learns nothing. And when the system learns nothing, it cannot downgrade you. This is why recognition is more powerful than strategy. Strategy still reacts. Recognition observes. Once you see public tests clearly, you stop mistaking tension for obligation. You stop mistaking visibility for danger. You stop mistaking silence for weakness. And in doing so, you become difficult to evaluate, not because you hide, but because you remain stable. That stability is what people call presence. It is what they call gravitas. It is what they call authority. But at its core, it is simply containment. Containment is not repression. It is the ability to experience pressure without needing to resolve it immediately. And that ability reshapes how others orient toward you. People trust what does not move easily. They defer to what does not scramble. They respect what does not beg for interpretation. This documentary is not about becoming intimidating or dominant. It is about removing the leaks that quietly undermine respect in public. Once those leaks are sealed, respect has nowhere to go but to stabilize. And when respect stabilizes, something else happens. You are tested less. Not because people fear you, but because there is nothing left to measure. The moment you no longer react automatically, the system stops probing. And that is the quietest form of power there is.